text that we're going to be using is from Genesis, specifically starting in Genesis 15. Abraham, or Abram as he was called then, was already a follower of God. He had followed his father to a small town where he settled down with his dad. The Bible story that we'll be following for this course is Abraham and Sarah's impossible prayer to have a child. Now, it was so impossible that we're not entirely sure Sarah even ever believed it. And Abraham had his moments. It all started out when Abraham, or called Abram at that time, with his wife, his servants, his kinspeople, his livestock, were on the road. God often spoke with Abraham. And one night, God brought Abraham out under the sky. And as they walked and talked, God told Abram, I am your shield and very great reward. Abraham agreed with that. Of course he did. But his real focus, his great loss, was here on earth. Because he said, Eleazar, my steward, is going to be my heir. I have no child. A servant is going to inherit everything that I have. And God said to him, no, he's not. The servant isn't going to inherit. Your son is. Your son of Sarah. Now, if Abraham and Sarah had been 25 and 20 respectively, all right, great, wonderful, but they weren't. Abraham was 90, Sarah 80. And although Abraham and Sarah were part of a line close to the beginning that lived longer than we did, 90 and 80 still were not childbearing ages anymore. Abraham could possibly still father a child. Sarah couldn't bear one. It was not possible. Abraham could have taken another wife, but he didn't. Apparently didn't want to. But he had no son, no child, no heir. And God said, look up at the sky. Now the sky of that time was not the few scattered stars that we see today through our light pollution. It was star fields, fountains of stars. Abraham looked up at the Milky Way, and God said, count those stars if you can. And this is how many descendants I will give you. And Abraham, the Bible says, believed, and it was credited to him as righteousness. We'll follow Abraham and Sarah through their course of belief and not. The times that they did believe, the times that they took matters into their own hands, the times when they settled for good enough. But God never settled for good enough. God saw that his good and perfect will would be done, and that in so doing, it would take a lot from Abraham and Sarah. But was that blessing worth it? Just as it will be to you, as you learn how to pray the prayer that seems to you to be impossible. A child, an adult child who is so far away from the faith that they hate Christians, and they're teaching their children to do the same. A marriage that you feel could and should have been saved, but there seems to be no way to do so. Life after a terrible event, after divorce, or after a death. How do you live? A business where you invested so much hope, so much healthy pride, but it's in ruins. Can God restore these things? Yes, absolutely he can. Will he always restore them in the way that we would like to see? No, not always. But when God tells you, I want to see this business thrive, I want this marriage to succeed, I want you to live a life blessed in me, the one who forgives. I want to see your adult child and your grandchildren come back to me. That's the impossible prayer, possible for us, perfectly and entirely, wonderfully possible with God.